folks. This is a long overdue new edition of the new Maroon Getaway vlog. It's been about a year since I've done one of these. This is actually going to be kind of a rereading of one of the parts of the Richard Heinberg essay, Human Predators, Human Prey. This is going to be part 3. So I'll probably end up splitting this part into about maybe 3 or 4 different episodes to get through the material, along with some running commentary. But again, I think this is it's such a good essay. He covers so much great material, so it's worth doing this again. Again, this is part 3: Human Predators, Human Prey, Society as Ecosystem in a Time of Collapse. He begins this part with the subheading 6, disease organisms, revolutionaries. Again, those are disease organisms, revolutionaries, parasites, criminals, and immune systems, law and punishment in times of growth and release. Let us proceed. In his brilliant 1976 book, Plagues and Peoples, historian William H. McNeill explored how infectious disease has shaped human societies through the ages. A remarkable paragraph on page 84 of the Anchor paperback edition has stayed with me for several decades and partly inspired this essay. He quotes, "Very early in civilized history, successful raiders became conquerors, i.e. learned how to rob agriculturalists in such a way as to take from them some, but not all, of the harvest. By trial and error, a balance could and did arise whereby cultivators could survive such predation by producing more grain and other crops than were needed for their own maintenance. Such surpluses may be viewed as the antibodies appropriate to human macroparasitism. A successful government immunizes those who pay rent and taxes against catastrophic raids and foreign invasion in the same way that a low-grade infection can immunize its host against lethally disastrous disease invasion. Disease immunity arises by stimulating the formation of antibodies and raising other physiological defenses to a heightened level of activity. Governments improve immunity to foreign macroparasitism by stimulating surplus production of food and raw materials sufficient to support specialists in violence in suitably large numbers and with appropriate weaponry. Both defense reactions constitute burdens on the host populations, but a burden less onerous than periodic exposure to sudden lethal disaster." At the risk of overquoting, I will reproduce McNeill's next paragraph as well, because he's on a roll here, and the explanatory firepower of these passages is measurable in megatons. These are insights that would later help win a Pulitzer Prize for Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, The Fate of Human Societies, which has been mentioned in previous episodes. Remember, the context of his discussion is the role of disease organisms in the evolution of human societies. And he proceeds with the quote, "The result of establishing successful governments is to create a vastly more formidable human society vis-a-vis other human communities. Specialists in violence can scarcely fail to prevail against men who have to spend most of their time producing or finding food." Good point. And as we shall soon see, a suitably diseased society in which endemic forms of viral and bacterial infection continually provoke antibody formation by invading susceptible individuals unceasingly is also vastly more formidable from an epidemiological point of view vis-a-vis simpler and healthier human societies. Macroparasitism, leading to the development of powerful military and political organization, therefore, has its counterpart in the biological defenses human populations create when exposed to the microparasitism of bacteria and viruses. In other words, warfare and disease are connected by more than rhetoric and the pestilences that have so often marched with and in the wake of armies. Having stood and cheered for McNeill's metaphoric usage of parasitism, I'm going to do something that I hope will not be too confusing. Take a deep breath and bear with me. McNeill uses the term macroparasitism in much the same way I have been using predation. I have no desire to quibble. His metaphorical framing serves his purposes well and is revelatory for readers. However, it seems to me that a somewhat different framing can be just as helpful. Parasitism, referring metaphorically to crime, quote-unquote, disease microbes to rebels, revolutionaries, terrorists and invading barbarians, and quote-unquote immune system to laws, enforcement, and punishment. From the perspective of lower classes, elites often appear parasitic, as Marx's followers insisted, as Michael Hudson suggests in his book cited previously, referring to today's financial elite. It's a book called Killing the Host. Can't remember the subtitle at the moment. And as McNeill does above. I would argue that this usage is not incorrect, but that it can be helpfully supplemented with another perspective. Elite classes are integral to complex societies. However, actual parasites are alien organisms relative to their hosts. The criminal, like a parasite, exists apart from the corpus of the state. His or her behavior is regarded as quote-unquote antisocial. A partial exception occurs in the case of political corruption, and which I'll discuss below. Parasitism and infectious disease are closely related. Disease-causing microbes are by definition parasitic. However, large parasites like intestinal worms and mosquitoes are seldom described as disease organisms. Host organisms typically co-evolve with their parasites. As a result, the latter tend to weaken but seldom kill their hosts. Infectious diseases, however, especially in cases where no host defenses have co-evolved, can be fatal. Similarly, crime is present in all complex societies and is seldom fatal to them. Revolution or invasion, though, can indeed be fatal to the body politic in some instances. The case for criminality as parasitism is relatively easy to make for property crimes, which drain wealth or lifeblood from society. However, not all criminal acts appear to be overtly parasitic. Crimes of passion, including murder motivated by jealousy or rage, might seem to poorly fit our metaphor. However, as anthropologist Stanley Diamond noted in his 1974 book, In Search of the Primitive, early civilizations regarded murder and suicide as property crimes, since they deprived the state of its subjects. Citing examples from many cultures, Diamond argued that concepts of property, law, and crime emerged and evolved together. As pre-state customs for resolution of disputes evolved into law, often via census, tax, conscription systems, specialists in charge of enforcement, representation, adjudication, confinement, and punishment also appeared. Crime is always present in complex societies, just as all higher order organisms are subject to parasites. But once a society is weakened, as it is when it approaches the release phase of an adaptive cycle, it can be overwhelmed, especially by microparasites, analogous to disease microbes, rebels, revolutionaries, terrorists, or invaders. This is why societies tend to prescribe particularly harsh punishments for anti-state crimes.